Why pay for this when you have free YouTube tutorials? CG Human is one of the most extensive and probably most newsworthy Blender paid courses out there online to date. Because of this and the results being so intriguing and amazing, I felt like it was the perfect time for me to take a shot and pay the $79 to take this course. And the question is, being a Blender artist that's learned everything from free YouTube tutorials, was the $79 I paid for this course really worth it?
I'm broke!
I'm Jordan Needham, this is Jham 3D, and today we're going to be answering that question in my CG Human course review. So before we answer that question, I want to go over a few things, just a general review so that you know what to expect if you do decide to take this course. So I am coming up on my third year of using Blender, but when I purchased this course, I was 2.5 years into being a 3D artist. So I have a pretty good understanding of how 3D art works. Blender in particular is what I've always spent my time in. So I'm probably intermediate, I would say. I wasn't a newbie by any means. So that's something to consider if you're taking my review from this. So why did I take this course? I felt like it would be a good challenge. For one, 2.5 years in, I wanted to take my work to the next level and really push myself a little bit more. And this course will definitely do that for you.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's challenge. Today,
I wanted to learn how to sculpt more in particular, and this was great for that. I wanted to improve my artist skills overall, just in general, to finally solidify in my head that I'm gonna be a 3D artist. That's my career. So I wanted to put some stake in the game and invest in my development a little bit. So knowing that I had 2.5 years of experience going into this, how difficult was it for me to complete this course? Well, the first 2.5 chapters, in particular the sculpting chapters, of course, because I don't know that much about sculpting and I don't have a ton of experience doing it, those took the longest. But the final 2.5 were much quicker, and it was doing stuff that I've learned a ton about on YouTube and I'm really comfortable doing. So if you don't have a ton of experience sculpting, the first half of this course is probably going to take much longer than the second half if you have experience with materials and lighting and textures and everything like that. I encountered a few problems trying to complete this course. One, I got overzealous. I thought like I can do a video a day and complete this as soon as possible, you know, but that didn't end up happening. Of course, I have other things that go on outside of this, work, other personal Blender projects, and it was just difficult because even if you make time for it, are you like smart enough at that hour? Because you can't really be doing a lot of this stuff at like 5 a.m. or something, because you actually want to make sure that you learn and take the time to really understand what you're doing so you can do it the next day and you don't have to go back and do rework and all that. Point is, make time for it, take your time with it, don't get overzealous and thinking that you can do everything and rush it right away. This course was potentially the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. Now keep in mind I'm 20, so not a ton of experience in my life, but it took a ton of patience and emotional maturity, I would say, because there are some Blender bugs, in particular with the multi-res modifier, that are just painful. And that is one of the reasons this course took so long. I would spend hours and hours sculpting the eyes.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Oh my. And then the multi-res modifier would break, and I'd have to go back and check for resaves and try to fix the topology sometimes. It was just absolutely painful. What to take from this is that Blender is not perfect. There are bugs that you will probably encounter during this course. In fact, the instructor himself is very clear about that, and he encounters the same bugs, but I felt like I just had a particularly difficult time with the Blender multi-res modifier just breaking and ruining hours and hours of work. So that is something to be aware of. All right, so moving on, what did I learn from taking this course? Of course, I learned how to make a realistic looking human using just Blender. Aside from that, I also learned a ton of tips and tricks that I found myself using daily on my other projects as well, like keyboard shortcuts, but also just workflow shortcuts, workarounds, and little tips and tricks that come in handy to make your workflow more efficient. I learned more about retopology, of course, a bunch about sculpting with shape keys, sculpting with multi-res modifier. Blender is really buggy. I also learned that. Texture baking, texture painting, also touched up on some material creation. So how about the instructor? How was Kent Trammell, I'm sorry. Really sorry if I said that wrong. But he is exceptional. Kent was really, really great for this course. Almost no time at all did I feel like I was confused due to his fault. He's very straightforward, soft-spoken, comforting to listen to in a way, and he goes into depth and details in ways that anybody could understand it. Listening to Kent just work through this whole process and watching his workflow was extremely impactful as an artist. Absolutely exceptional, if you will. So one last thing before we get into answering the question, was it worth the money? We have to talk about the downsides of the CG Human course. And in my opinion, there's only a couple downsides, and I feel like I'm just nitpicking, so keep that in mind. The number one downside is actually, in my opinion, that this was all done in Blender. And that sounds dumb because this is a Blender course, but there are times, and Kent even mentions this, that Blender is not the perfect program for sculpting for one, or material creation at times. It just feels like at certain times you'll like kind of outgrow this software for certain skills. You wish you kind of had like the industry standard, such as ZBrush. There's little bugs and just kind of issues that Blender still hasn't quite worked out that can be pretty annoying and really impact the efficiency of your workflow. So, but it's a free software. Just always keep that in mind. Second downside, I feel like if you're taking this course, you probably need a pretty beefy PC, so a good PC build, because if you don't, I reckon it would be insanely tedious. And even for mine, sometimes it would take a really long time to render certain frames when you're getting into the rendering stage. And that can just make the smallest tweaks really tedious if you're waiting, 25 minutes per frame, which I know Kent was, and I was waiting like 17 minutes, sometimes only 3 minutes, sometimes 20 minutes. So it can take a while to render, but also when you're sculpting, in particular using the multi-res modifier, I mean, everything gets to a really, really high poly count. And if you're not careful and you don't have a good enough build or a powerful enough build, I could see you really running into some issues with that. I don't, however, think that you need an amazing PC to do this. It will, though, absolutely, it will hinder your speed that you get this done. So finally, was it worth the money? Was it worth the $79?
I can't eat! I'm broke! I'm broke!
I actually paid like $150 because I got the prerequisite course.
Look what I found in my pocket! Look! A year's salary right here! Fun coupons! See that?
But life goes on. Remember that. Money isn't real, George. Doesn't matter. It only seems like it does.
$79 was well worth it. Money well spent. I do not regret that purchase at all. This really took my skills to the next level, really helped me improve and get closer to being an industry professional for sure. One of the real benefits to getting a paid course like this and not having just YouTube tutorials is that they can go into further depth and detail, and it can get boring at times, but oftentimes those boring parts are the really important and critical parts to your development and your learning as an artist. YouTube, I find, often cuts those parts because obviously they want to keep viewer retention. But if you have the time and it's a 47-minute video or 30-minute video, it's often very helpful to watch Kent work through some of these bugs, go over some things that maybe aren't so entertaining but are definitely important. And so that is something to keep in mind when you're considering whether you should pay for a course or just watch a bunch of YouTube videos that maybe only have 70% of the detail or 60% even, because they cut the boring part out. So overall, the CG Cookie CG Human course is absolutely worth the money, and I'm extremely happy with my purchase. If you're diligent enough and you're patient enough and you put into work, this will absolutely take your 3D artist skills to the next level. Highly recommend, probably a 9 or 10 out of 10. If you guys took the CG Human course, or you just are a Blender artist, a 3D artist, and you would like to share your work with me, please DM me on Instagram. I'm always willing and welcome, and I love when people share their work with me. So please don't feel shy to do that. I'm Jordan Needham. This has been Jham 3D, and I will catch you next time.